Jude Bellingham is one of the biggest superstars in football right now. At 16 years old, he was dominating the championship. At 19 years old, he was dominating the Bundesliga. And now, at 21, he's dominating world football as he's undoubtedly become one of the best players in the world. But despite his insane rise to the top, he's still attacked by the media, being labeled an arrogant, overrated, and overprotected player. But still, he's managed to prove them all wrong. So, how exactly did he do it? How did a little boy from Birmingham overcome every challenge thrown at him to become the best midfielder in the world? This is the full story of Jude Bellingham.
And it's in! What a header! Real Madrid lead!
Jude Bellingham was born in the sleepy town of Stourbridge, a suburb on the edge of Birmingham and about as far away from the Bernabeu as you can get, but still, like every kid growing up, he had dreams of playing for Real Madrid. He grew up watching his policeman dad play non-league football in the 11th tier of English football, and he quickly became young Jude's first footballing hero. But despite playing so far down the football ladder, Mark Bellingham was lethal, scoring more than 700 non-league goals, and was always giving Jude and his younger brother Job tips on what to do. And this seems like it was the secret sauce, as both Bellingham brothers would end up going pro, but more on Job later. One day, Jude's dad returned home and gave him a fake shirt of Real Madrid legend Zinedine Zidane, and Jude thought, that is the player I want to be. But even then, he could have never imagined that he would not only meet his idol one day, but also get to wear his famous number 5 shirt. Now, by the age of 8, Jude Bellingham was already called in to join a youth setup after a Birmingham City scout saw him playing for Stourbridge Juniors, but the challenge was only just beginning because so many youngsters get that far and fail. But Jude was a diamond in the rough, a player who would never back down from a challenge, and what he was about to do would make him a proper Birmingham legend. By the age of 15, he was already playing for Birmingham's under-23s and scoring on his debut, which is something that would become a regular occurrence, and by that point, he was already getting noticed by big European clubs and was mentioned by Football Magazine 442 as one of the most exciting teenagers in English football. But within just 1 year, at 16 years old, Jude was set to face his first huge test. Because after doing so well in the under-23s, now at only 16, Jude was about to make history as he became Birmingham City's youngest ever player, beating the previous record set by club legend Trevor Francis by more than 100 days. But the championship is a brutal league, so any 16-year-old, no matter how good you are, would find it tough, especially playing for a struggling Birmingham. Jude's debut didn't go as planned, and he was brought on as a substitute in a 3-0 loss and even picked up a yellow card. But in the next match, head coach Pep Claudette knew he needed to give his star youngster a chance, and when Birmingham's winger got injured in the 30th minute against Stoke, Claudette brought on Bellingham, and our hero rewarded him by scoring his first ever goal in senior football to win the game for the Blues. It might have been a lucky deflected shot, but Bellingham's name was already in the headlines and made him the youngest goal scorer in Birmingham City's history. Claudette said Jude deserved the goal, and it was a reward for all his hard work. He scored again in the very next game and became a regular in the Birmingham team, and by January, Manchester United even put in a huge £20 million bid to sign Bellingham, but Birmingham turned them down as Jude would end the season in the championship, making for a historic year for the 16-year-old as he made 40 appearances for Birmingham, being named the Championship Young Player of the Season, proving he was destined for greatness. Birmingham knew they weren't going to be able to keep their young star with top clubs circling the Englishman, from Man United to Chelsea, but the decision was in Jude's hands, and what would choose to be a strange decision for the football world. As he announced his departure from the club, Birmingham proceeded to shock the football world by retiring his number 22 shirt, which is generally an honor given to the greatest in the game and not to a teenager with less than a year of pro football under his belt. But as the years would go by, this decision would prove to be iconic to say the least. But for now, Jude decided to turn down the money from the world's biggest clubs and put the focus on his own development as a player. So at 17 years old, Jude got on a flight to Germany to continue his insane rise to the very top of football as he joined the perfect club fit for his development. Now, despite being an English star in the making, Jude Bellingham turned down the advances of England's biggest clubs and instead chose to join Borussia Dortmund because he knew Dortmund was famous for developing young talent like fellow Englishman Jadon Sancho and giving them a chance to shine. The German side paid £25 million for Bellingham, making him the most expensive 17-year-old in history, and upon arriving in Germany, Jude said Dortmund's working-class roots reminded him of Birmingham and gave him a real connection to the city. But the move to Germany wasn't as easy as it seemed because Jude had to say goodbye to his dad Mark and his brother Job, who stayed in England. So instead, his mom Denise made the trip to Dortmund with him. And speaking about his mother, Jude said even still in 2022 that she makes his bed and that she has a bigger role in his success than any of his coaches or managers. Now, being away from his dad was tough, but Jude was especially close to his brother Job, who was also playing in the Birmingham City youth team and had dreams of following in his older brother's footsteps. But more on that later. Jude made his debut straight away for Dortmund in a cup match against Duisburg, and guess what? He scored on his debut with that goal, making him Dortmund's youngest ever goal scorer, and a few weeks later, he became the youngest Englishman to start a match in the Champions League. Things were going great for Jude, and by the end of the season, he lifted his first trophy as Dortmund won the DFB Pokal Cup, and Jude was named Bundesliga Newcomer of the season. But that wasn't enough for Jude. He wanted the biggest trophies, and in Germany, one thing would always stand in his way: Bayern Munich. Before he continued his German adventure, he would soon learn that even he couldn't escape the curse of being born in England, a nation that gathers every 2 years to experience what it's like to be a Tottenham Hotspur fan, as Bellingham made his England debut in November 2020, making him the third youngest player to play for England. He was then named to the squad for Euro 2020 and broke yet another record, becoming the youngest Englishman to play in a major tournament. But Southgate didn't trust him on the pitch yet, and he had to sit on the bench as England lost the final to Italy on penalties, and unfortunately, it wouldn't be the last time he had to sit out and watch his team's best chance of a trophy in years slip away. Back in the Bundesliga, Dortmund looked like title challengers again, and in December 2021, Jude put in the kind of big match performance he would become known for, getting 2 assists against Bayern Munich. But it wasn't enough, as Munich won 3-2 after a controversial penalty call, and Jude was fuming. After the match, Bellingham took an interview and said, "You give a referee who has match fixed before the biggest match in Germany. What do you expect?" These comments landed him a 40k fine from the Bundesliga, and it wouldn't be the last time he caused controversy with his comments or gestures, as he would sometimes let his passion get the better of him. As the season drew to a close, Dortmund would finish second, 8 points behind Bayern. But the next season, they would take the title race down to the final day, and Bellingham was no longer a hot prospect, but a team leader, even captaining Dortmund on occasions. But with that responsibility comes even more pressure, which is something Jude was proving he could definitely handle. Dortmund started the season slowly and were as low as 6th when the season took an extended break for the 2022 World Cup. Jude scored his first international goal and had a stunning tournament that cemented him as an international star. But like always, the World Cup ended in misery for England, who lost to France in the quarterfinals. But on his return to the Bundesliga, Jude helped Dortmund go on an incredible run, losing just once in the remainder of the season. He was named as the Bundesliga Player of the Season, the European Golden Boy, and won the Copa Trophy. He also scored a then career best 8 goals, but all that wasn't enough, because with 2 games to go, Bellingham injured his knee, and he was forced to watch the final game of the season from the substitutes bench, where Dortmund just needed a win, but found themselves 2-0 down against Mainz. Jude sat in frustration, unable to change the outcome of the game. Dortmund scored 1, then another in injury time, but it was too little, too late. They lost the title on goal difference to Bayern Munich, and Jude was in tears as he went onto the pitch to say farewell to the fans, even pushing the camera away to hide his emotions. "I was just so heartbroken." Bellingham finished his time in Germany, having played 132 games for Dortmund and scoring 24 goals, but despite the dazzling number of individual honors, he only had his 2021 DFB Pokal to show for it. Bellingham had now conquered Germany on an individual level, and Spain was next, with the summer's headline once again being all about Bellingham, as he was about to make the move that would send his career into the stratosphere and finally fulfill his childhood dreams. Real Madrid had finally seen enough of Jude and decided he must be signed at all costs, so they spent $115 million to bring him to the Bernabeu, making that the largest fee for any English player ever. But English players have often struggled in Madrid. David Beckham was brought in to complete the Galacticos, but the team only won La Liga once while he was there. Michael Owen struggled to get into the Madrid side and was sold to Newcastle after just 1 season, and Jonathan Woodgate scored an own goal and was sent off in a debut remembered by many as among the worst ever. But to make things worse, Bellingham was joining a Madrid side that had finished 10 points off the title and crashed out of the Champions League in the semi-finals the season before. So this begged the question, could Bellingham do any better? Well, his debut was certainly better than Woodgate's, as it took him only 36 minutes before he scored his first goal against Athletic Bilbao in the season's opening game. But despite a great debut, Jude said that you're not a proper Real Madrid player until you win a Champions League. Now, whilst at Dortmund, Jude had been playing mainly in central or defensive midfield, but at Real, Carlo Ancelotti chose to deploy him further up the pitch, meaning he was firmly an attacking midfielder and, unsurprisingly, his goal returns increased. Real Madrid's new number 5 netted 5 times in his first 4 games and 8 times in his first 8 games as he took La Liga by storm, prompting his famous celebration to be born with his arms out wide and head tilted back. And there just seemed to be no stopping him, but Jude was about to face his biggest test yet in a Real Madrid shirt as he entered the game that mattered more than most, the El Clasico. He faced a cauldron of noise at Barcelona's Olympic Stadium, and that noise got even louder in the 6th minute as Ilkay Gundogan scored the opener for Barcelona. But in the 68th minute, Bellingham scored a wonder goal for Real. And then, in the 92nd minute, he scored a late winner to secure victory in the biggest league match of the season, cementing himself as one of the best football players on the planet. And this was being reflected off the pitch, with Adidas making him the face of their Predator boots, the very same boots worn by his idol, Zinedine Zidane. But despite a stellar start to his time at Madrid, things got a lot tougher in the second half of the 24-25 season. A series of suspensions and injuries meant he was in and out of the side and only scored 5 league goals in the new year. But Jude's game is so much more than goals, so even though he wasn't finding the net as much, his performances were still getting better and better until he once again let his passion and aggression get the better of him. In the beginning of March, Real Madrid marched out to play against Valencia in La Liga, where Jude scored a winner with the last kick of the match. But the controversy came when the referee claimed he had already blown the final whistle. Jude angrily shouted at the referee and was handed a red card, meaning he had to miss the next 2 matches. But of course, he would be back stronger, as his next goal was in the second El Clasico of the season, and this time, Jude scored in the 91st minute to win the game for Madrid in a match that effectively sealed the title. And that goal made him Real Madrid's all-time top English goal scorer, above David Beckham, Laurie Cunningham, and yes, even Jonathan Woodgate. He would go on to finish the season as Real Madrid's top goal scorer in the league as they strolled to the La Liga title, finishing 10 points ahead of Barcelona and giving Bellingham the first league title of his career. But there was an even bigger prize to play for, the Champions League. In the quarterfinals, Jude faced Manchester City, who had eliminated Real Madrid the season before, and he had to sacrifice everything for the team, playing in an unfamiliar false 9 role. The match was tight, and it would go to penalty kicks, and Jude said he spent the last 15 minutes of the game preparing for his kick, and that penalties are the most uncomfortable and lonely you can feel on the pitch. But it didn't look like that, because he sent the goalkeeper the wrong way as Real Madrid marched on to the semi-finals to face his former side's nemesis, Bayern Munich. He says his role was just to feed Vinicius Jr., and come the 88th minute, Madrid were down and out until Jude did exactly what he was instructed to do. He passed to Vinny, whose shot was saved, then Joselu scored the rebound before scoring again to send Madrid to the final, where Real faced none other than Jude's old club, Borussia Dortmund, the club that had helped make him a superstar. The final was at Wembley Stadium, and it was tense to say the least, with Dortmund seemingly the better team in the first half until the 74th minute, where Real Madrid took the lead, and then just 9 minutes later, Bellingham passed the ball to Vinny, who scored to seal the win for Real Madrid. Once the final whistle blew and Jude saw his mum and dad in the crowd, he broke down in tears, remembering all the long hours they put in, taking him to training as a kid, and now he was getting an assist in the Champions League final. But this wouldn't be the last assist in a major final that summer, as after celebrating winning Europe's top club trophy, Bellingham would be going back to Germany to try and do what England just missed out on 3 years previously, winning the European Championship. Last time Bellingham played at the Euros, he was just breaking into the England squad, but this time, in Germany, he was the star player with all the added pressure and responsibility that comes with having a nation's hopes and dreams on your shoulders. And he was still just 20 years old at the start of the tournament. England had one of their best squads in years, but there was a problem. 3 of England's best players all played in the same position, and head coach Gareth Southgate would have to choose who to play in attacking midfield, Bellingham, Foden, or Palmer. The fans and pundits called on Southgate to drop Bellingham into the number 8 position, but Southgate kept his faith in Bellingham as his number 10. And in the first game, against the tough defenders of Serbia, Bellingham rushed into the box and threw himself at the ball to score the only goal of the game. England were off to a winning start, and the fans were singing Bellingham's name.
Jude Bellingham's wonder season just keeps on going.
But Those songs started to turn to boos as England underperformed against Denmark and Slovenia, and the media got on the team's back. Then, in the last 16 match against Slovakia, disaster struck. Slovakia scored on the counterattack, and no matter how much England tried, they couldn't score. Was this to be Iceland in 2016 all over again? Belief was lost, and fans were leaving early, but those who did missed the moment of the tournament because in the 5th minute of extra time, a hopeful long throw was headed on by Mark Guay just behind Bellingham, who, out of pure instinct, attempted a moment of madness and scored that goal.
Walker. Helped on. And it's in!
Who else? The game went to extra time where Harry Kane scored to send England to the quarterfinal against Switzerland. But this Switzerland side had just dispatched Italy in the previous round and were tough opponents, and with the score level, the match went to penalties. Manuel Akanji missed his spot kick for Switzerland, and Bellingham walked to the spot for England's second kick. Cool as ice, he scored, and England never looked back. They were in the semi-finals against the Netherlands, where a last-minute goal by Ollie Watkins sent England into their second final in 3 years and a trip to Berlin. Spain, though, were unstoppable and scored early in the second half. But then Bellingham gave England a chance as his pass set up Cole Palmer, who equalized, making that Jude's second assist in a major final that summer. But it was not to be, as Spain scored late on to break both England's and Bellingham's hearts. He said, when the whistle blew, everything went numb. Jude, in his anger, kicked over a water bottle basket, and the English media was on his back once again, labeling him petulant and selfish, and Jude said they always seem to need a scapegoat, and that time it was him. But despite the struggles at the end of the season, he was still named La Liga's best player, meaning in back-to-back years, Jude had been named the best footballer in Germany and Spain. And he was also in the running for football's top individual trophy, the Ballon d'Or, where he placed third behind Rodri and teammate Vinny Jr., placing him firmly among the world's best. But despite this electric season, the doubters still stood strong, and with a slow start to the 24-25 season, haters began to believe he was just an overrated and arrogant one-season wonder. But of course, Jude has already started to prove them wrong yet again, as he has done time and time again, and still, at only 21 years old, he's surely going to dominate football for the next decade to come, because the only question is, who else? Now, if you think Bellingham is one of the best football players in the world, you just have to subscribe. And if you want to hear about Vinny Jr.'s rise to the top of football, you gotta watch the video on screen now.